Hi guys, today we have Shaun Tollerton, product designer at Deliveroo, London. Hi Shaun, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, it's great. The May is a good time to sit at home, as all we do. How things are going in London?
Yeah, the lockdown's still going. We're about 2 months in now. Starting to miss the world. We're supposed to be traveling to Istanbul today. That's not happening, so just trying to make the most of it here. Yeah.
Let's try to think positively, so maybe in 1 year or 2 years it will happen.
Yeah, I hope so. Definitely.
So, we're going today to talk regarding your career and experience, and it will be cool to start from early beginning. Can you share, please, how did you started your career as a designer? What was the background? What was the initial point for you?
Mm. Well, yeah, I'll go back to when I was in school, and like art was definitely my favorite subject. I remember spending like hours drawing still life objects with like charcoal or pencils. I was very inspired by MC Escher, very photorealistic drawings. Um, so that's when I sort of realized that I had like an eye for sort of art and graphics. And then also my dad sort of recognized that, and he actually gifted me like his old 35mm film camera. And I remember like doing lots of experimentation with the camera and doing long exposures, and that sort of got me comfortable with sort of compositions. And then eventually that transitioned into digital photography. And I remember sort of reading lots of magazines around digital photography as well. And you'd often get like these free CDs that would have like trials of Photoshop Express and Paint Shop Pro and how to edit the photos and like add type on there. So that was like the very beginnings of sort of exploring with sort of, I guess you could call it graphic design, but it's kind of, digital creativity. Um, and then I remember starting to do like party invitations for friends because this was around when I was like sort of 16, 17. So just sort of experimenting with that.
Was it commercial or non-commercial, just for fun?
Mostly just for fun, like friends at school. Like that was the very first exposure of like doing graphic design. And yeah, and then after like school, I was looking at college. And because of my initial experience with photography, I was exploring that as an avenue. And then I also discovered graphic design was another course that I could take. Um, and in the end, like I went with graphic design. There was more like potential in that I saw than photography. Um, so I proceeded with studying graphic design. And then sort of after like college, I went on to pursue it at university. And back then, this was like 2006 or so. Um, there was two different courses. This was at UCA Epsom in Southwest London, and they had two different courses. So graphic design and then graphic design new media. Um, and I didn't know much about the new media aspect of it so much. I was maybe a little bit intimidated by all the different parts of that, but I wanted to learn more the fundamentals of graphic design. So I pursued that, and that's where I learned about sort of typography, grids, color systems, and so on. Um, but I definitely found myself gravitating towards the more digital aspects of the course. So after year one, I actually spoke to my sort of course leaders and requested to switch to graphic design new media, and they actually granted that request. So uh, years 2 and 3 was purely focused on the new media aspects of graphic design. And that's where I learned about sort of 3D and animation, designing with data, video editing, designing for the web, all these different aspects. And I just found new media just to be like way more exciting than all the traditional parts of graphic design, like being on the bleeding edge.
And I'm curious, what was the first real job in design area?
Yeah, so in that final year at university, they had an internship program, but obviously you need to know someone to get an internship. So how do you do that? Um, so I was very passionate about attending events where I could and also going to conferences. in London. Um, and I remember going to one conference, and there was lots of different speakers, and afterwards I pulled one of the speakers aside. There was like a line of students there, all like trying to get the attention of the speakers. But I managed to get my sort of 30 seconds with this person. And I expressed that I was in my final year and I was looking for an internship. And I'd already prepared some business cards with my email address on there. So I handed that over. And then sort of, yeah, like the following weeks, it actually did turn into an internship, which was really cool. So I sort of did that whilst sort of still studying. And then when I eventually graduated, I was promoted to like a junior designer. So I became like an official full-time employee. So that was great. So coming straight out of college, university, and then going straight into a full-time job. There was like I was even considering doing a gap year, doing some travel, but I really wanted to like keep the momentum that I'd managed to get there. So yeah, I worked with that agency. It was a digital advertising agency, and their primary work was microsites, interactive flash banners, and that was very popular at the time. That used to be FWA awards and all these different awards around like interactive websites, like really flashy 3D stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
Flash was cool.
yeah, action script and timeline animation. It was a lot of fun. So I did that for, yeah, it's about 3 years. Um, it's also worth noting that I graduated in 2008 and the iPhone was announced in 2007. Um, but yeah, but by the time it was sort of 2009, 2010, like the App Store was sort of like really blowing up. And I could see this, and lots of companies didn't have their own internal design teams at this point, so they were using agencies to get the expertise of all these digital advertising companies to sort of help start their very first apps. So that's sort of when I knew that I wanted to go into that space. Like I'd had enough with doing microsites and banners. I wanted to create things that people actually wanted to use in a meaningful way. And mobile was just, the definite direction to go there.
What was the point in your career when you started working for a company which is making a real product design? I mean, like working on a product for local market or international market.
Um, yeah, so when I sort of realized that I wanted to go into product, there was an agency in London called Us Two, and they were doing really like silly, fun games for kids and very experimental stuff. There's one app they did at the time called Mouth Off, and you would get an iPhone, hold it in horizontal format, and put it in front of your mouth, and it would have like these cartoon mouths, and it would react to the voice that whatever you're saying, and it's just really like fun experimental stuff. But they were also starting to work with companies like Sony Ericsson at the time, and H&M, the fashion brand. So I'd reached out to them to ask if I could work for them, and I got an interview, and unfortunately I was successful. This was in 2011. Um, so yeah, that was the first sort of company that was taking mobile seriously that I'd worked for. And the first client that I got involved with was the H&M project, and this was H&M um, starting their very first like native apps on Android and iPhone. So that was the first time, and also like mobile web. So understanding the differences between those two, all of those different platforms is really interesting. Yeah, and then after that, it was working with Barclays. So Barclays was one of the biggest clients at the time. We called them pillar clients. So it was really eye-opening, and like actually using the product on your phone and playing with it was really interesting. All the sort of user experience and the research that was going into it. And at the time as well, us two was very passionate about PPP. They called it pixel perfect precision. So the level of craft was like insane. So that was really where I learned about sort of creating very meticulous icons, and UI that was very like sharp and on point, and reflected the brand, because like this was before design systems as well. So yeah, the level of quality was really strong. Yeah.
Which part of your career was the pivot point?
I would say there are two biggest pivot points in my career. One is transitioning into product design from like web design, and that was when I joined Us2. But I mean, up until I joined Deliveroo, all of my career was in agencies, and you're essentially servicing a client. That means that you're kind of a step removed from what is actually being created. Now that the industry has sort of matured, lots of these companies that would have used an agency now have their own teams. So I would say the second pivot point is joining one of those internal teams, and that was when I joined Deliveroo.
How do you compare your experience working for agencies and the experience working in a core team of specific product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, at an agency, a client gives you a very specific brief which focuses on um, quite a specific problem, and lots of the time, like you don't know how broad this thing is going to be, how long we should spend on something, how much does it cost. So it tends to be quite a detailed problem that you're given, and then you'll sort of work on that for the given time. It could involve a workshop, like a discovery phase, and then you'll create the work, you'll get the feedback from the client, you'll iterate, and you'll give them deliverables, and that can be the end. But in-house, you actually live with the problems. You see the problems emerge. You can predict problems. Um, so you're kind of living with the overall space. It's very much ongoing, and I feel like that's more sort of, I wouldn't say authentic, but yeah, you just have a deeper connection with what you're creating for, and why, and why it's good for the business, and why it's going to be good for the actual user as well.
Which part of the product are you working on now?
Yeah, so at Deliveroo right now, I'm sort of focused on a few different areas. One of the biggest ones is around discoverability. So as a sort of a consumer of an app like Deliveroo, when you open the app, you want to be able to find food that you want to order. Um, but the thing is, there's so much choice out there. How do you show the right thing at the right time? And we've sort of called these two different types of users. There are like pursuers and there are browsers. So as a pursuer, you're opening the app and you know that you want, let's say, a burger. So when you open the app, you need to find where that burger is. Now, how do you do that? I mean, yeah, like you can show burger joints at the top, but like there's no intent yet. So maybe you're only showing what's trending right now. And then there are also browsers, and these are people that are going to open the app. They haven't even thought about what they want. They just know that they're hungry and they want something soon. So they're opening the app and they're just sort of browsing around. And sometimes we'll get a lot of drop-offs because people can't find what they want. They don't know what they want. We didn't show them what they want, and that's the biggest challenge, is like catering the experience for those kind of users. So that's sort of a space that I've been spending a lot of time on at Deliveroo.
Can you please describe in a nutshell your current responsibilities?
Yeah. So at the beginning of this year, one of the biggest projects I worked on was a vision piece for Deliveroo, and that was looking at what the product would look like for consumers in like 18 to 24 months. Um, it's worth noting that Deliveroo has consumers who order food or groceries, but we also have the restaurants and the riders themselves. So wherever we come up with in a vision has to work for each of those three sides of the business. So coming up with vision was a really exciting project because we needed to see what each of those three areas needed to improve on, what could be really radical on as well. So that was a really cool collaboration with the various teams. And then we demonstrated that in, I think that was February now. And it got the company really excited. Like it acts as a North Star for what people would work on, or like a guide for what people would work on. And then, as you know, in February, March, we had the global pandemic that had happened. So all the plans that we had on sort of going towards this vision had sort of been like like a big pivot, and we needed to focus on lots of different things, such as contact-free delivery, making it clear to consumers that their deliveries would now be contact-free. Riders needed to know about that. We also needed to adapt and optimize our product to work better with grocery stores. Right now, Deliveroo is known for ordering takeout food, restaurant quality food, and not many people know that you can actually order groceries on there. Toilet rolls were sold out everywhere, toilet paper, but you could actually get that on Deliveroo, but not many people knew that. So making that clearer and easier for people to use was one of our new priorities that we didn't know about. And the most recent project that I've been involved in is around rounding up your bill to donate to a charity. And Deliveroo operates in lots of different markets around the world. So we want people to be able to donate to a relevant charity in that given market in our MVP. So in the United Kingdom, you'll be able to donate money to the NHS so that healthcare workers will get free meals. So being able to create new features like that in very quick turnaround, all at the same time, we have incredible volatility in the product. We have restaurants that are unable to operate. We have new restaurants that are coming on. We have new grocery stores coming on. So it's a very volatile but exciting time to be working for a company like Deliveroo. So yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of all the things I've been looking at.
How was your experience of starting to work remotely during this period while we're all on lockdown?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I never worked remote to this level before. So yeah, we've had lots of communications. We'll still have our stand-ups in the morning. And we'll always have the video call on as well, so that we can see each other and react to each other. We also do lots of over communication, being very clear, posting in Slack, and we use Workplace now, Facebook's Workplace. So these are big tools that we try to over communicate in, and also the ability to reach out to someone directly and even have a quick Slack call, in a very serendipitous way. In the same way that you would just walk up to someone's desk, providing they didn't have their headphones on, but you could just chat, have those water cooler moments. So trying to do that in a digital way has been a challenge and something that we're trying to get better at. But yeah, Slack calls is probably one of my favorite ways of doing that. And then also just having fun. Earlier on, we one of our teammates hosted a bingo and a quiz, so we just jumped on a Zoom call. Headwear was encouraged, so I had a wig on. I was using this Snap camera, has a bunch of desktop filters. So just trying to have fun as well at the same time, and yeah.
And in general, what is the design process in Deliveroo?
Yeah, so we try to have sort of a quarterly roadmap for the things that we want to be doing. Obviously, during times like a global pandemic, it kind of throws everything up in the air, but eventually things start to get a bit clearer and we can work out what the plan is. And then we will have reviews of the work that we can see coming up, and then we'll prioritize that. That's in an ideal situation. Sometimes it can be putting out fires. Like we know, for example, with grocery stores, we had an issue where if you ordered a bunch of items and one of those items wasn't available in that store, the entire order would get cancelled because there was just no functionality for the employee at that grocery store to say that this item is not available anymore. Like, should they substitute that item or should they cancel the whole order? So we needed to sort of react to that very quickly. So that's just an example of something that we need to do quickly, because we saw a lot of growth in that usage behavior. So the product manager will communicate a lot of this in our sort of team Slack channel, and also we have a broader sort of tech org Slack channel, and we have an experience design Slack channel as well. So there's all these different kind of teams, but yeah, it's good to stay in close communication with the product manager to understand what the needs are, like what they're hearing from throughout the business. So normally there'll be some sort of source of truth document, like a PRD or product requirements document, and that's where we will all collaborate and put in the things that we know to be true and what we need to work on, timelines, who's going to do what, etc. So that's the ideal scenario. And then I tend to work our design team works in Figma, which is just an amazing way of collaborating across the different disciplines, and being very transparent about your work. So like we'll have the link in the PRD to the Figma file, so the engineers and the PMs, etc., can go in there and see and comment if necessary.
When did you move to Figma?
Yeah, so before I joined Deliveroo in 2018, and I think they were
Was it already on
already,
Figma?
yeah, they'd switched to Figma, I believe, up to a year earlier than that. So they switched from Sketch to Figma, and so the whole design system was already set up, which was fantastic. It's like super robust. It's optimized for the consumer products. It's optimized for our tools as well, because we have a bunch of internal tools and we have tools for our restaurants, which uses like different patterns than what our consumer products would use. So yeah, delivery has been very progressive in that respect, which is like super cool.
Okay, so which digital or industrial products impress you the most and why?
But some of the best examples, in my personal experience, that I use is like Apple's activity and health apps, because they kind of get rid of all the things that get in the way sometimes of design. So it's very minimal and reduced, and very clear, like super clear and functional and very intentional. And I think that's very important in product design, but also delightful experiences I really enjoy. Like one of the things I've been using recently is Zenly, which is a sort of a social location sharing app from Snap, and it's super delightful. The animations are crazy, and like 3D icons and things. So I think delight is super important for engaging users, especially in our current climate. And then on top of that, I think Instagram stories are doing a great job with all the functionality that they're carefully adding into the stories part of the product. Being able to do polls and donations, and yeah, it's a really good way of raising awareness to there's so many issues that are around right now. And then like another example of sort of a digital product that's sort of pioneering right now is like Apple and Google's collaboration around contact tracing for COVID-19. And like how they're coming together to create like a standard that allows all these different Android and iPhone devices to anonymously sort of handshake, so that we can understand like if you've been infected, who else may have been infected, and that's really inspiring to see teams unify like that. And it's going to get us sort of back into normalcy. It's going to help get us there faster.
Which skills do you see as the most crucial, let's say top 3 skills for product designers now?
I would say the number one skill is having empathy for your users. So understanding who they are, what do they want, um, being able to sort of weigh up like quantitative and qualitative data insights. And it's important for you to build up a strong intuition on your users. And yeah, because ultimately, like, there's just so much data that we can be getting about our users. We don't just want to be building a faster horse. We really want to know what our users are saying, and then sort of being able to jump ahead of that and create something that's going to go beyond what they were expecting. So, yeah, all of that is around empathy for your users. But not just your users, I would say also your team members. Um, I mean, at a company like Deliveroo, we have lots of different disciplines that we need to work with, like engineers, data scientists, researchers, content designers, product managers, and all of those folks have their own priorities and agendas and various requirements. So, like, understanding all of their positions really goes a long way. Um, I mean, there's one example where I've worked with engineers before that I've not really met personally, but we've found ourselves on a team together. And there's no natural trust or sort of background into how you tick. So I think just yeah, trying to level with those folks, and like, I mean, I just find socializing goes a long way. Hanging out, um, just finding out what they're into. Like, if you can sort of break that barrier and just connect as humans, so when you do actually get to the work, like, you've established that trust, and they'll understand. You know, if a rounded corner should be 4 pixels instead of 8, they trust that there's a reason for that, and it's going to be consistent or whatever it is. They kind of understand your rationale. And I would say the third point, sort of a skill for designers, is to sort of stay on top of what's new in design and technology, like really be on the cutting edge, because it's such like a fast growing industry to be in. Like, there's always new best practices and principles and standards. So, like, how do you stay on top of that? And I think, like, good places to start there is the various annual developer conferences. So, like Facebook's FA and Google I/O and Apple WWDC. But they're really great ways to see what's being announced and what sort of trends they're all going for. Like, it could be in machine learning. You know, there's just so many different things that we could be going into. And then on top of that, there's just, yeah, absorbing podcasts and or YouTube videos. There's just so much content out there. Um, like, yeah, like reading and listening to interviews. Like, it could be like this, or with other companies that you sort of admire and respect. And also, like, yeah, attending those conferences and events yourself, um, just to understand what challenges there are out there. It's not always a technological challenge. It could be inclusive hiring, um, ways of working, remote working, and all these things. Like, I think attending events and conferences really helps. And so many companies are doing remote streams now. I recommend trying to attend those. And if you can't attend them, then like, if they put the videos online afterwards, then watch it in your own time. Like, there's loads of great stuff out there.
What was the recent book or maybe talk or any kind of podcast that you have listened and that impressed you a lot?
Yeah, so I've consumed so many different podcasts, or sorry, subscribed to so many different podcasts. Yeah, it's hard to know where to start, but Design Details is a really a good one. Um, Invision's Design Better podcasts. Yeah, Intercom as well. They have a really good one. And then, yeah, one of the most recent books that I really enjoyed was Creative Selection by Ken Kosienda. He was one of the engineers that sort of worked on the keyboard on iPhone. So understanding like how they sort of prototyped those experiences and how they ran those by their stakeholders at the time, like Steve Jobs and Scott Forstall and stuff, is fascinating. That's also where I learned about the concept of a DRI, or a directly responsible individual, and that's when you kind of empower an individual to own a particular area within a product. So like the author here, Ken, was responsible for the keyboard, or he came to be responsible for the keyboard. So if it performed really badly, then you're going to get cut. But also if it performs really well, then you're going to get rewarded for that. So I really liked that concept, and that's something that we didn't do at Deliveroo, and now we actually are starting to do that. And then yeah, I mean I've been trying to consume lots of stuff on YouTube. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. I mean, I mentioned Figma already. They're publishing all of their remote talks. There's another YouTube channel that I watch called Mind the Product. Um, yeah, the last one I watched from Mind the Product was a talk by Marty Cagan from Silicon Valley Product Group around the root causes of product failure, and how sort of how ideas turn into roadmaps, that turn into product requirements, that turn into design that gets fed down to engineers, and then that the end thing might not actually be answering that initial idea, or maybe the initial idea wasn't a good idea to begin with, but because most companies work in this way, it can set up for failure. So yeah, there's understanding the root causes of product failure was yeah, really interesting talk, and trying to understand how we can mitigate those things.
How do you feel about the upcoming future of whole delivery apps? I mean, do you see any kind of trends that are happening, and how do you see this whole area in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier with food delivery apps that we sort of identified browsers and pursuers when they want to order food. But yeah, when those folks open a food delivery app, we want to make sure that we're going to be showing them the right thing that they want to order. So if they did want to order a burger, like in an ideal world, they would open the app and we would just have the best burger dish ready to be ordered for them with the quickest delivery time. But how
Personalization, right?
yeah, so we need to be contextual to the time of the day, the time of the week, even the time of the month. Like, if it's the end of the month and they've been paid, maybe they want to order a bit more, something more special. If it's the maybe they're trying to save money. So how do we surface dishes and orders that are going to be more cost effective? Maybe there are existing behaviors. So maybe a particular user might order tacos on a Tuesday. So why don't we show them Mexican restaurants and taco dishes on Tuesdays when they open the app? And then like seasonal trends as well. That seems fairly straightforward. So if it's Cinco de Mayo, then let's show them Mexican again. Um, but yeah, like you mentioned, personalization, like 100%. So if you're a family of maybe 4 people, you need to make sure that we can show them like group bundles, bundle deals, food that's going to serve a family, good for kids. Maybe you're a student, so we want to show things that are going to be low cost. We've also seen behaviors where people will over order and then they will put food in the fridge for the following lunch time. So being able to sort of cater for those situations has been really important, and sort of dietary preferences is a big one. You know, if you don't like fish or you don't drink alcohol, why should we ever show you that in the app? And then like different ways to sort of display content. So like lots of dishes have amazing rich photography or even videos. So how can we make that more appealing uh, and more enticing as well? So like full screen photography versus like a very small thumbnail. So like, you know, how can we play with that? Um, and then yeah, how could these things affect both the restaurant and delivery teams? Because whatever we do for one team has to be able to work for another. So like if we did want to have video content in there, then we need to make that easier for restaurants to be able to add that content. Maybe we need to have user generated content in there. So making those things easier are going to be interesting. And then one of the other aspects that we have to be able to figure out as well is localization. I mean, Deliveroo operate all over the world. We're in Asia, Australia, various countries in Europe, and even the Middle East. So whatever like feature we come up with in one market has to be able to work really well in another. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have a particular feature in another market. Maybe each market has their own set of features. So yeah, it's just something that we need to be very mindful of. And we have a great localization team. Um, for example, like we have these cuisine shortcuts, and for burgers, we had an image of a bacon cheeseburger. But in the Middle East, you know, it's not really good to show pork in your food because that's not something that those folks want to consume. So we want to make sure that the photography is localized and yeah, it works for those different markets. And the way that we write as well, like content is a very important aspect of what we do at Deliveroo. So, I mean, most recently we're trying to promote takeaways in our app, but isn't all food takeaway. I mean, Deliveroo is known for restaurant quality food, which tends to be sort of the higher quality food, more expensive, um, more optimized for folks that live in the city or urban professionals. But if you live like outside of the city, you know, takeaways tend to be sort of lower quality, like Indian, Chinese. But calling it takeaway is a very British word. So how does that translate in or localize into different markets around the world? That's been a really interesting sort of conversation that we're having at the moment, as an example.
Which designers do you follow on Twitter or elsewhere? Who inspires you?
Yeah, there's so many amazing designers out there. It's kind of tricky to answer, but I would say most recently I've been following Tori Hin, who's a creative director at Figma, and she's been creating like really fun work for that company. Ink traps for the win. And then I worked with a designer at Airbnb called Jennifer Holm, and she's sort of been behind the inclusive illustrations there and how to systematize illustration across such a massive global product. So yeah, big respects to her. And then yeah, like folks that are supporting their respective design communities. I would say we have Trying Girls here in London. So like Anna Youngs, Liz Hamburg, and Rachel Grocott have been sort of running that, and it's been really cool to see the community come together for that. There's another designer called Jules Forrest who she was behind Women Who Design, And she literally, like yesterday, created this new one called COVID Layoffs.design. So that sort of bringing visibility to all the talented designers that have been laid off over this past pandemic has been really cool to see. And even another one here in London was Miles Palmer for starting pairup.org, which is just a place for creatives to find and offer their time to others with the goal of sharing, learning, and problem solving with each other. So I think all of these things are just really good, especially in our current climate and how we can all be unified and promote each other in these difficult times.
Is there something that pisses you off in the world or in society? Just should be something for sure.
Yeah, there's so much that's going on in the world right now. It's crazy. But I think the biggest thing is around the climate crisis. I mean, it pisses me off that there are politicians out there that will put the economy before the health of the earth. Like making sure that oil companies are operating well. Do we need more fossil fuels being produced right now? Maybe not. So things that we can be doing that I can see is for like limiting carbon footprint through sustainable means of travel, whether that's like commuting to work on a bicycle or walking. Or like if you like to go to conferences around the world, which I definitely do, maybe don't consider flying to the opposite side of the earth. Maybe wait for that conference to appear in a more local setting to you. There are things like shopping locally that I believe is going to really help your community, and reducing like plastic waste and taking your own containers and bags. It's going to go a long way.
Earth needs more plastic.
Exactly. Yeah. And also working for companies that are putting the climate first and making sure, so like working for companies that are putting the climate first, climate. So like for example at Deliveroo, we're sort of like we're trying to reduce plastic in our packaging that restaurants are using, so providing them with really good resources and materials to be able to use eco-friendly packaging. And even ages ago, we introduced a setting that would allow you to turn off cutlery, because why should we just throw in plastic cutlery by default? So by turning that off by default has saved an outrageous amount of plastic. And then there's plenty of folks out there that you can follow that are really sort of pioneering in this space, or at least they're talking about it a lot. There's a guy called Kai Brack, who was the person behind Offscreen magazine, and he's big on like small footprint living and creates a really good weekly newsletter called Dense Discovery. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of that, but yeah, it's a really good way of sort of understanding how to be productive and inspired and sort of think critically in this sort of climate crisis mentality out there.
I think we'll be closing this. Thank you so much, Shaun, for your time, and thank you, listeners.